Hi there. I'm Mickey from the School Community Adapt Lab, and I'm really glad you're here. So I want to start by naming something I hear all the time from intuitive, creative people. And it's usually said really quietly, sometimes with a little guilt attached. So I'm worried AI is going to dull my intuition, flatten my voice, and make my work feel less authentic, less me. And if you felt that, raise your hand, but you're not behind and you're not wrong to question it. Intuition is really subtle. It's quiet. It doesn't shout. And most modern tech feels fast, loud, and pretty overwhelming. So of course, it can feel like a threat to our intuition. But there is one thing I really want to offer you today. And I want to say that AI isn't the thing that can replace intuition. It's the thing that either crowds it out or quietly makes space for it. It's all in how you use it. And that difference matters so much. So in this talk, I want to show you a different way to think about AI, not as something that harms your creativity necessarily, or that you hand your inner voice over to, but as a background support system that takes care of small, draining tasks that pull you out of your intuitive state all day long. So we're going to talk about why intuition gets harder to access when your nervous system is overloaded, even if nothing really feels obviously wrong. And we'll look at everyday tasks that quietly scatter your focus and why they matter a lot more than you think. And I'll show you how using AI in a really simple, human way can give you back the mental space that your intuition needs to come through clearly. By the end of our session, you'll understand how to experiment with AI as an intuition amplifier and discover what actually creates more space for your intuition to come through. So you'll see how reclaiming even a little bit of time and energy can make your ideas land faster, guidance feel clearer, and make your creative work a lot more aligned again. So this isn't about becoming more productive, although that's always nice. Don't get me wrong. This is about becoming more present. So let's start to talk about what's really getting in the way. I don't think the real problem is necessarily AI. The real problem, I don't think, is the technology. It's the constant low-level overload we're all carrying. And we're carrying this constant low-level overload often even before AI enters the picture. So most intuitive people I talk to aren't necessarily burned out in a dramatic way, although that does happen. They're still showing up, they're working, and still helping people. But underneath all of that, there's a steady hum of mental noise that really doesn't turn off. There's too many small decisions, too many unfiltered, unfinished thoughts, too many tabs open. And that's not just on your screen, that's in your head. All those tabs are open. It's replying to messages. It's rewriting the same email 3 times. It's trying to remember what you meant to do next. And it's holding on to everybody else's needs while you're really quietly ignoring your own. So none of those things are really heavy on their own. But together they keep your nervous system in a mild state of alert. Not crises, just enough tension that your system stays busy managing in the background instead of listening and thinking. Okay, so before we go really further, I think it's worth pausing to ask, what is actually draining you specifically? Let's make this about you. So if your mental load comes mostly from repetitive tasks, emails, scheduling, organizing, planning suppers, summarizing, then AI can really reduce that friction if it's used properly. But if your drain comes mostly from emotional labor, holding space for managing difficult dynamics, absorbing other people's stress, hello, that's me, then AI probably won't touch that directly. You can work with it a bit to help identify patterns, but what AI can clearly and easily do for you is free up energy and time. So you have more capacity for boundary work, repair conversations, or getting support. If your mental load comes from a really complex decision fatigue, genuinely hard choices with no clear right answer, AI can't make those decisions for you, but it can help you think through options, organize your thoughts, and create some clarity so the decision feels less overwhelming. And this is a hard one. If the drain on your mental energy is life circumstances, grief, illness, caregiving, financial stress, then this tool is just a really small help in a much bigger picture. It won't fix what's hard, but it might give you an hour of rest, which really can matter when you're stretched thin. So the key is knowing what you personally are actually working with. We were talking a lot about how the modern world feels stressful and busy, and it is. We all know this. And intuition doesn't thrive in that state. Intuition isn't loud, it isn't forceful, and it doesn't compete with mental clutter. It shows up in pauses, in moments of quiet, in the space between tasks, when we're on a walk. When your attention is constantly fragmented, intuition doesn't disappear completely, but it gets really hard to hear. So that's why so many people say things like, I feel really disconnected from my intuition lately. Or I just want to get clearer guidance than I'm getting right now. It's rarely because their intuitive ability is gone. It's because their internal environment is too crowded to allow for intuition and creativity to be fully present. And the worst of this is that we've been taught to create what's happening in our modern world as normal, that busyness is good, that you push through it, that you need to manage it better. You need to be more organized, more efficient, more disciplined. But intuition and creativity don't respond to pressure. They need safety and space. So I think this is where AI can become interesting if we use it right. It's not necessarily a creative force for us. It can be. But in this sense, it's a relief valve. So when something else like AI handles your repetitive, low energy tasks, your system can get a signal that it can stand down a little. The constant background management starts to ease. And when that happens, clarity has room to return. I want to be careful here. When you're using AI to handle repetitive, low energy tasks, don't replace them with additional tasks. That's something we all want to do. We want to get more done. Leave some space. And I know this from experience because I've done it. So the question, I don't think, is really whether AI is good or bad for intuition. The question is whether you're using it in a way that reduces noise or adds to noise. And that brings us to why intuition needs space in the first place. One of the most misunderstood things about intuition and creativity are that how fragile they are under pressure. We tend to think of intuition as something mystical or powerful, like it should cut through anything. But in real life, intuition is subtle and it comes out in those quiet moments. It doesn't push, it doesn't interrupt. It tends to wait until there's space to be heard. And from a nervous system perspective, intuition shows up most clearly when your system is relatively safe and settled. You don't need to be totally calm. You just need to be not constantly bracing and in the background running unfinished loops and tasks. And when your day is packed with work and demands, small demands even. Hello, kitty. When your day is packed with small demands, your brain stays in management mode. Even if you would enjoy your work, and I do, your attention is still fragmented. You're switching contexts, switching modes, tracking loose ends, remembering what comes next. And that constant switching uses the same mental resources intuition relies on. So this is why guidance and intuition often show up in the shower or on a walk or right before sleep. Not because those moments are somehow magical, but because the noise finally drops. You can hear your own inner guidance and inner thoughts. You're not constantly running, what did I need to do tomorrow? What's the next thing on my task list? So think about if you can, the last time you had a really clear insight or intuitive nudge. It probably did not arrive when you're answering emails or juggling logistics. It came when there was a pause, a breath, a little space. For intuitive work, space isn't a luxury, it's an absolute requirement. And I think that's the same with true creativity. When there's no space, intuition doesn't just vanish, but it does get really muffled. You might start doubting yourself more, second guessing yourself more, feeling less confident in your needs, your ideas, your creative choices. Not because your intuition is weaker, but because it's competing too much with constant background activity. I think this is why trying to force intuition rarely works. You can't think your way into it. You can't optimize it into existence. Intuition responds to permission, not pressure. And that's the part most people don't realize. You don't need huge blocks of time to get that permission, necessarily, although they're nice. What you do need are fewer drains on your attention. So this is where the idea of space becomes practical. It's not necessarily about needing to take a week off or meditating for hours. It's about reducing the number of small background tasks that constantly pull you out of your intuitive state. So when those drains are handled elsewhere, like with AI, your system relaxes, your attention settles, and intuition can speak up again, often in really ordinary moments. So that is the doorway AI can open if used correctly. So not by making decisions for you, not by replacing your voice, but by quietly protecting the conditions intuition needs to function. And that leads us to the core idea I want to share with you. It's called the intuition amplifier. An intuition amplifier isn't something that tells you what to think, what to create, or what to do. It's something that quietly removes friction so your own knowing can come through more clearly. So I think most of the fear around AI and creatives tends to come from using it in the wrong role. When AI is treated like an authority or the voice of the decision maker, it can absolutely flatten your work. It can make things too generic. It can pull you out of your body and into your head. And that's not the kind of partnership we're talking about. An intuition amplifier works in the background. It handles those things that don't require your intuition, so your intuition isn't wasted on them and it's not pushed down by them. So here's the distinction that I think matters. There are parts of your work that are really repetitive, mechanical, or mentally draining, even if they stay necessary. For each of us, they might be a little bit different. You'll have to kind of get in touch with how you feel to decide what it is. For me, it can be writing a first draft, organizing scattered thoughts, answering endless emails, summarizing notes, just remembering what comes next in a busy business and family life. And then there are parts of your work that are deeply human: insight, tone, judgment, story, emotional truth, the sense of what's right for you and your business. So the intuition amplifier idea says this: let AI handle the first category of busy work so you can stay present for the second, your intuition. So now I really wish that line was nice and clear, but it isn't always clean. So what feels like draining admin to one person, like me, like writing a first draft, might actually feel really creatively fulfilling to you. So you'll need to experiment and notice what genuinely creates space for you versus what pulls you away from your center. But when you don't spend your intuitive energy on logistics, it becomes available for meaning. When you're not starting from a blank page, you have more room to listen inward. And when your mind isn't juggling 10 unfinished tasks at a time, your nervous system settles enough for clarity to emerge. So this is why AI does not have to compete with intuition. Used this way, used correctly, it supports it. So think of it like this. If you were trying to hear a quiet voice in a noisy room, the solution wouldn't be to make the voice louder necessarily. The better solution would be to lower the background noise. So that's what an intuition amplifier does. It doesn't add anything to you, it removes what's in the way. And this is really, I think, important. The moment AI starts telling you what to believe or what you should create, it crosses a line. That's not necessarily amplification, that's outsourcing your inner authority. But when AI is used to create space, not lead the conversation, your intuition stays firmly in the lead. Okay, so next, I want to make this very concrete with a few simple, non-techie examples so you can see exactly how this works in real life. Nothing fancy, nothing overwhelming, just small shifts that make a difference. And I want to make this concrete because it really only works if it's usable for you. So I'm going to share a few specific examples, not to tell you exactly what to do, but to help you see where the intuition amplifier shows up in everyday life. First example, starting instead of staring. A lot of intuitive people get stuck at the beginning of things. They get stuck at the blank page, not because they don't know what they want to say, but because starting takes a lot of mental energy. When they're already carrying a lot, that blank page feels louder than it should. So using AI to create a rough starting point can mean your intuition moves into the role it's best at, which is responding, refining, sensing what's off, and adjusting. So you're no longer asking your intuition to do administrative labor. You're asking it to do discernment. See, I do this all the time. This works well for me. If I am stuck and staring at the blank page, I just get AI to create me a few sentences. And somehow magically, when those sentences come out, I can go, oh, that's awful. That's not what I meant at all. And I change it and I rewrite it. And all of a sudden, my intuition is there and it's working for me. So my second example, turning chaos into clarity. I think we all could use some of that. So think about how often you're holding scattered thoughts in your head. Notes from a session, ideas you jotted down quickly, the dentist appointment on Tuesday, kind of half-formed insights that feel really important but messy. When AI helps organize these thoughts into something structured, your intuition doesn't disappear. It gets to focus on meaning instead of management. So you can feel into what matters. You can feel with what resonates, what needs to be emphasized or softened. Okay, third example is protecting your energy from admin, and this is one of my very favorite ones. There are tasks that quietly drain your intuitive energy because they pull you out of like an inner state over and over again. One of the most famous of these is the email inbox that you keep checking over and over again throughout the day. Scheduling is another one. Follow-ups, summaries, things that are endless, polite messages over text that you have to word really carefully. So letting AI handle the first pass of these tasks means you're not constantly context switching. You stay more present, more embodied, more available for the work that actually requires you. And on top of that, I would suggest batching these sort of tasks so you do them all in one moment if you can, and using AI to help you in that moment, and then the rest of your day will be clear. Okay, so one last thing. If you try handing something off and it actually feels worse, like you've lost connection to your work, that's a really important distinction here. It means that task was somehow feeding your intuition in ways you didn't realize. Just bring it back. So this isn't about following rules. I mean, if you're one of those rare people who loves email and has a great inbox, you don't need to do this specifically with email. So instead, the intuition amplifier is about noticing where it actually helps you feel more present and what doesn't. So what really matters isn't the specific tool, it's a pattern. So every time you hand off something that doesn't require intuition, you protect the parts of you that do. And something kind of subtle happens when you start to do this constantly. Your body learns it doesn't have to stay braced all the time. And your mind stops hovering in constant task management mode, and intuition starts showing up in smaller, more frequent ways. Like, not always dramatic lightning bolts, just steadier clarity. Okay, so this is the fourth example. It's one of my favorite ones that I use. Using AI as a thinking partner, not just a task handler. And this one might be a little counterintuitive. So I think one of the most useful ways to work with AI isn't offloading necessarily, it's collaboration. You can ask AI to challenge your thinking, offer alternatives if you haven't considered, or just play devil's advocate. And you can use that for an idea you're developing. Your intuition then gets to respond to what AI says, to feel what resonates and what doesn't, to take what works for you and leave the rest. This iterative back and forth, I think, is really helpful for sharpening discernment. You're constantly practicing the difference between what sounds logical to an AI and what feels true to you. So between what AI suggests, which is sometimes really helpful, honestly, sometimes not, between what AI suggests and what you actually want to say, there's such an important distinction. There's such an important difference between helpful structure and someone else's or something else's voice. So over time, you're going to get better at knowing when to trust AI's input and when to trust your gut. So that discernment is intuitive work. AI doesn't replace it. It just gives you more opportunities to practice it if you use it carefully. So in the next section, I want to talk quickly about what happens when this adds up over time and why saving even a small amount of time each day changes a lot more than your schedule. Here's where this really starts to matter. When people hear you can save an hour a day with AI, they often think about productivity, getting more done, checking more boxes, being more efficient. No, that can be great, but that's not what I'm talking about. The real shift isn't about time on the clock. It's about what happens in your body and in your attention when even a small amount of pressure lifts. It's when you reclaim an hour and your nervous system really notices. There's less urgency, less rushing, less mental juggling. You stop living slightly ahead of yourself all the time, and that's where your intuition will get stronger. Not because you're trying harder to access it, but because you're no longer constantly pulled away from it. With more space, ideas land faster, decisions feel clearer, and you trust yourself more. You feel less scattered when you sit down to create. Your work starts to feel like less effort, even if the output stays the same. And that's why an hour can really matter. It's not about filling that hour with more tasks. It's about what opens up when you're no longer running on that low hum of stress and busyness. So the really good thing is that you don't need to overhaul your life to feel this shift. You don't need to master a dozen tools or become tech savvy suddenly. You just need a few small changes that remove friction instead of adding to it. When AI is used intentionally, it can become a way to give yourself permission to slow down without falling behind. It can hold mundane, boring details so you don't need to. And that gives your intuition a little more room to lead. So in this final bit, I want to share how you can start experimenting with this in a really simple way and where you can find support if you want to keep exploring that approach. So if this way about thinking about AI feels relieving to you rather than overwhelming, I want you to know you don't have to figure it out alone. I run a free school community called Adapt Lab. It's a place for curious, thoughtful people who want to work with AI in a really human-centered way. No hype, no chasing the latest tool, no pressure. Just really amazing people and practical experiments, honest conversations, and tools that really make life feel easier. So inside that community, I share simple ways to use AI to help you save time and protect your energy, especially if you're intuitive, creative, or doing deeply human work. It's really low key, very welcoming, and built for people who want clarity, not more noise. So as a starting point, I've created a gentle guide called Steal Back an Hour a Day with ChatGPT. This walks you through really easy ways to hand off repetitive, boring tasks so you can reclaim time, focus, and mental space. You don't need to be techie for this. You don't need to change how you work overnight. It's all about small shifts that add up. Panda, say hi to these lovely people. Panda's been assisting.